grassroots, real grassroots organization, mind you, the Virginia Citizens Defense League, or the VCDL. Now, without pushing that agenda too hard, let me just state that we are highly motivated and very organized. Part of that organization involves a wide-ranging email system that we send out letting all the members know about upcoming events, protests, meetings, and the like. And a few years ago, those alerts were repeatedly naming State Senator Ken Cuccinelli as a speaker. Now, a little bit more about me, because it's not about Ken just yet, right? I'm not really a Republican. I feel like I'm in church giving a testimony when I say that. But no, I'm not a Republican per se. I am a small L libertarian who tends to vote Republican because the Republicans tend to support my conviction better in most political races. So the VCDL kept talking about Cuccinelli, and I would read these emails thinking, well, there's a fellow who knows how to court. I mean, he represents Fairfax, you know? Finally, one night, Margie and I attended a VCDL meeting at Tuckahoe Library on the 16th of January 2008 in Richmond, and Ken was the keynote speaker. Now a little bit more about me. I'm a native Fluvannian. Yep, I'm made of red mud. Grew up hating the Buckingham Knights, despite my mother being a Buckhamite. She's only been here 60 years or so. I'm a native Fluvannian, receiving by almost pure osmosis the ideals espoused from Monticello, in whose shadows I cut my teeth. I went to Fuma, for crying out loud. Margie and I sat in that meeting at Tuckahoe Library, and I heard a man speak about the Jeffersonian principles of government that I thought had been relegated to no more than philosophical debate. He spoke about property rights, freedom of expression rights, firearm rights, inalienable rights, and the enumerated role of government in our lives. Margie and I walked back to the car that night, and I looked at her and I said, man, talk about a guy who gets it. Well, we got home, both subscribed to the Cuccinelli Compass, and I've been a fan ever since. Brothers and sisters, I support many politicians in the GOP, but there are very few I get enthusiastic about. I am about to introduce to you one over whom I am very enthusiastic. And don't get me wrong, here in Fluvanna we have very good state-level representation. Frank Ruff is my state senator. I like Frank a lot. He's a good old boy. I'm represented in the House of Delegates by Watkins Abbott, who is a freedom-loving son of a gun. Most of you have Delegate Rob Bell, who I'm also very fond of and who has won my support repeatedly as I've come to watch him. All these guys usually vote right and have introduced very agreeable legislation, and they've served me well on their various committees, but it is Ken who has waded into the thick of the most controversial issues and spoken for me on the Senate floor over the past few years. Ken will, in fact, go into a fight knowing he will lose the argument just to establish a voting record against his opponents. Friends and neighbors, that is a tenacious bulldog of a debater. Exactly the type of man we need in the state attorney general's seat as we enter the new political landscape of the early 21st century. You know, you'll hear people say, well, he's just using that seat for higher power. Fellow Flucos, I can only hope that Ken Cuccinelli is using the state attorney general's seat for higher power. In a few moments, you will be meeting a principled Republican. A principled Republican. It's a term that's almost become alien to us. He is a principled Republican, and that is why he wins elections. Now, a couple of the facts before I wind this up. Ken was instrumental in starting a bipartisan prayer group among the Virginia legislature. These lawmakers conduct a study every Tuesday at 6:30 a.m., voluntary attended by these legislators. It's an event that's become known as the Sunrise Caucus. He's also dragged his political opponents onto the basketball court. I understand he's a rather tenacious fellow there as well. He's even gotten Tim Kaine's boy Woody out there on the floor with him. Margie and I attended the state convention this year, and it was geared toward our next governor, Bob McDonnell, and that's how it should be. But I'm going to tell you something. Ken Cuccinelli owned that convention, and I'm confident that once you hear him speak, you are going to be a fan as much as I and several thousand other Virginians. Now, just so you know, Ken is not perfect. He's not a Baptist, but I'm going to work on that. He's not photogenic, Jen and I have a score of pictures of him, and his eyebrows are always too high, or he's making some ridiculous face. But, you know, I'm married to the best-looking woman in the room, and she can't take a decent picture either. He thinks that paintball is a real measure of firearm proficiency, so he's actually scared to come down and plink cans in the backyard with me. But that's okay, too, honest. He's only lived in Virginia since he was 5. Two, excuse me. During Wikipedia, I'll make the change there. Before that, though, he lived in New Jersey. That's a hard one to overcome, except with this crowd. Oh, and Ken, when you're doing your Bible study and you read in Genesis that God said, be fruitful and multiply, he didn't mean for you and the missus to do it all by yourself. Okay? But with that, ladies and gentlemen, friends and neighbors, who am I kidding? Brothers and sisters, I give to you the next Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia, my friend, my brother, my voice, a politician who gets it, Kenneth T. Cuccinelli II.
Thank you, Clint. The check is in the mail. I'm going to sit down now. Thank you very much. You obviously put a lot of time and effort into that, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate being here with you all. Sorry I'm a little late. We got to see a little bit more of your county than we anticipated. Garmin's not all that familiar with this area. And sometimes, especially early in the morning, we can be a little too reliant. Last week, we finally gave up on the first vehicle of this campaign and buried it, made a deal with my father, and he traced it himself. I asked him what he got for it, $675. But it didn't qualify under the Cash for Clunkers program, so it wasn't clunker enough. But so we haven't moved all the maps over to the car we're driving around in, so I didn't have my Garmin backup. It's no substitute for a paper map, I'll tell you what. I am in the state Senate running for Attorney General. Many of you were at the convention, though I know not all of you were there. I'm here to ask for your support and your help. We need both. Less than half of Virginia voters are going to vote this year, more or less regardless of what we do. But you can take care of the half that won't vote in your church. You can take care of the half that won't vote in your gun club. You can take care of the half that won't vote in your Rotary Club just by dragging them out yourself. And as a guy who's won in a recount, and you all may remember the last Attorney General's race was the closest race in the history of Virginia statewide elections, it occurred to me, Bob McDonald and I were out in Harrisonburg with a bunch of pastors a few weeks ago. And he spoke first and commented on having 5 kids and me having 7 kids, and sort of a light bulb went off. You know, Bill Bowling's only got 2. And I said, you know, it hadn't occurred to me before that all the politicians with lots of kids have been through recounts. Maybe we take these votes a little more seriously in the long run. But I joke with people, we'll get our majority one way